Hello everyone, Jason here with VC Edge. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. It's about Christmas time and I don't usually like to buy presents. I like to make things and give them to friends and family for Christmas presents. And this year's no exception. I've got this awesome machine, I might as well make something cool. So I'm going to make a sort of ordinary object. It's just a bottle opener, but I'm going to be making it out of titanium and carbon fiber. So hopefully this will turn out really awesome. I've got my design all together. Let's just go ahead and start machining this thing out. Here's what I've come up with for a design for my bottle opener. I've got the head here, which is titanium, and it's gonna slot in using this sort of like puzzle piece shape. I don't know, maybe there's a technical term for what that is, but that will slot in using a slight interference fit, but I'll also be bonding it. And of course the handle here is going to be some carbon fiber, and it'll be unidirectional carbon fiber, so it won't have the weave pattern, but I've got these angles that'll be machined into it that will show the layers as it's machined through, as well as this interior piece. I've cut it in at an angle so that the layers will show up instead of just being a flat piece. Should make it a little more interesting looking, and of course on the top you'll see the lines. Now for the head piece, I'm going to machine it about halfway down, maybe a little bit more than halfway on the first side, so that I can clamp square stock into the vise. But when I go to do the opposite side, I am going to have to use some soft jaws to hold it in place. Hopefully that works out and locates it properly. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a relatively simple part, but it's quite a bit deeper than anything that I've been machining so far, and definitely the carbon fiber is something new. So let's just go ahead and get started on it. We'll start with the titanium part since I have a lot of the tools already set up. This is just a block of titanium that I've had sitting in my material drawer for a while. I finally figured out something to use it on. I would normally just do both of the parts out of this one chunk, but because then you have to get an end mill in the middle here, it would waste a lot of the material that's available, and I think the part that I want to make out of it's going to take up almost exactly half of this. So I gotta cut it down the middle and then machine it out one at a time. So I've got my piece set up. I'm just going to be doing these one at a time because it's kind of an unproven code. I've got this buried in as deep as I dared. I'm going to be getting real close to the top of these jaws. The distance between the parallel and the top of the jaw is 240 thousandths. So in my code, I need to make sure that I select stock bottom and go about at least 20 thousandths above that for the bottom of my tool pass. Nothing will go below that. So got to be real careful. 20 thou isn't very much clearance at all. So time to start machining. So that took about 20 minutes. Tools did a great job. That long 1/8 inch tool sounds a little high pitched, but the wall finishes are quite good. So I think I'll just run another one just like it. I do have to make one that's an exact mirror of this, so it'll be basically flipped the other way. Because of the way I've set up the second op, I need to do two of these at a time, and one of them is a mirror of the other. And unfortunately in Fusion you can't just do mirror toolpath and do a pattern, because it won't be doing climb milling anymore for some reason. So I got a separate program for another mirrored one, and we'll do that, and then we'll set up for the second operation. So there's my two mirrored parts. I'm gonna have to install these soft jaws and then machine them out to hold these odd shaped parts. And then we can do the other side. The way I designed it is to have about 1/8 of an inch gap in between. You don't want to just put this in here and machine it without something in the middle. So what's 1/8 of an inch? Well, parallel happens to be almost exactly the right size. I can insert this parallel and then clamp the jaws in there. I just need to make sure that this distance from the top of here to the parallel is more than 300 thousandths. I'm only going 300 thousandths down from the top. Nice and tight. And I can machine out the pockets for where the parts are going to go. Got those little pockets machined out for the soft jaw. Just gotta put my parts in there, see if they fit. Looks pretty good. They should just clamp right in. They do. Alright, very nice. So I just gotta tap those down and then I can get to machining this other side. So we got the business end all done. It's looking pretty good. We did have some chatter on the outside, but it's barely anything. I'll just hand sand that out, no problem. The design fits the bottle cap just about right. It does have a little bit of play in here. Next version I'll probably decrease that amount of space, but it's not a problem. It still grabs on just fine no matter how you hold it. So that should work really well. So I gotta move on to the next part, which is the composite handle. And to do that, I'm gonna switch to the wider jaws. They're 8 inches wide so that I can get a better hold on it. It's gonna be like a 9-inch part. So I can machine 2 handles out of each piece. I wanna show you some of the tools that I'm gonna be using on this composite material. Some of them are pretty interesting. For example, this one I'm gonna be using for the facing. The inserts are tipped with this material called PCD, which is polycrystalline diamond. So it's actually just a layer of diamond that is brazed onto these inserts. And this is a 3-flute one. That should do really well on taking off the bulk material off of the faces. PCD lasts a long time in carbon fiber. It will just keep going and going. The other ones, I have a ball end mill that I'm going to use for some of the roughing. This one's from Kennametal. This is just a 1/4 inch ball end mill. It's 2-flute and also has the PCD cutting edges. And then I've got a 1/8 inch end mill. This one's really cool. This is a what you call a compression cutter. Now this is diamond coated. It's not polycrystalline diamond, but it's like a amorphous diamond. It's just a coating on the outside, so it lasts a lot longer than just regular carbide. But this one, what's interesting about it is flutes on the bottom are like a normal cutter where it pulls the material up, but the other part, it actually twists the opposite way and pushes the material down. So when you're making the cuts, it won't delaminate the top or bottom of the composite, whatever it is you're cutting. Pretty neat stuff. Just for reference, these tools are quite expensive. This one, somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 to $90 just for one 1/8 inch end mill. They're all kind of in that price range, and obviously the bigger you go, the more expensive they get, but they last way longer than you could do all this machining in carbon fiber with normal carbide end mills, but they will wear, and they'll wear during the machining. So you run into tolerance issues as you go. And these will keep their shape for at least 10 times as long, if not longer, if you do it right. I've got some other ones that are different sizes and things, but that's what I'm going to be using for this little handle piece. So there's the setup. Got my 9-inch piece inside these 8-inch jaws. This is a pretty thick piece of carbon fiber. It's a little over 600 thousandths thick, and that allows me to clamp it up just like I would pretty much any other type of material. You do want to make sure that you have the what's called the tool side on the bottom. That's the side that's way more flat than the top, because when they put laminates together, they put it onto a flat surface and then lay it up, and so the top surface isn't as flat as the bottom. So if you can identify which one is which, always put the tool side down, bag side on the top. For probing, I probed this the fixed jaw on the back side of it, and for the Z I'm using the bottom of the part, and for the X I'm going to use a very particular spot on the side, and right now I've got it set to 300 thousandths up and 300 thousandths in, and so when I flip it over, I'll flip it that way, and then I'll come over here and probe the X again for when I do the opposite side operations. The other zeros won't change. I am definitely going to turn this down a little bit. I've got it programmed to sort of optimal feeds and speeds, but I don't want to break any tools because that actually really hurts when that happens. There's my parts after the first operation's complete. I was supposed to have a little extra material over here, but it's okay. My part's actually still contained within the stock, so I just won't have as much support material on this side. It was supposed to be 9.5 inches instead of 9. But as you can see, it didn't clean up the entire face. So what I'll need to do is when I flip it over, I'll have to put the parallel sort of in the middle instead of on the edge like it normally is. So that's no big deal, because in this case I'm not actually going through all the way. So that parallel can be right there in the middle, no problem. First impressions after machining some of this composite, it definitely does leave some residue. It's sort of like a dusty kind of material. It's heavier than the coolant, so it doesn't stay in suspension or anything. Imagine it's like sort of what you would get with cast iron or something like that. So I'll have to make sure I clean that off after. Another thing is the coolant. The coolant in my first stage filtration is definitely pooling down there. So I have to make sure that I keep an eye on the coolant level to make sure it doesn't go below the minimum It's getting higher and higher in that chip tray as I do more and more machining. So that kind of just tells me that my first stage filtration is a little bit too fine. I probably need to go from, this is a 25 micron, I might need to go to like a 40 or 50 or something like that. So it's good to know. I'll have to try that. But otherwise it's going well. Just gotta pull these out and cut the tabs off and then do some hand sanding on the edges and see if my little puzzle piece fits. I think it's a dovetail, but just a rounded dovetail. You know, that's what I'm gonna call it. So as far as the fit goes on these, when I pulled them out of the machine, they were a little bit tight. I couldn't get them to start hardly at all. So I used a little diamond burr just to take a little bit of material off the insides of this. And what I'm looking for is for each side of this to go in pretty easily at first. Like that, so that when I jam this together, it'll have a nice tight fit, but it won't risk delaminating the edges. You definitely don't want to try to put this together right now all the way, because if you jam this together, one of the things about composites is it will, if you jam something into it, it will spread out and then just clamp on to whatever it is you jam in there, and it's very unlikely that you'll be able to get it apart without destroying the composite. Something to keep in mind, especially if you have like a fastener or something that's going through something. You want to make sure it's got clearance. Otherwise, you tighten it in there, it'll almost never come out if the hole is too tight. I got these all prepped for bonding them on. Now this bond isn't exactly for like a full structural integrity bond. It's mostly just to fill the gaps. Since these are press fit, it'll hold in there just fine. So I'm just going to mix this up, bond these together, and then afterwards I'll come and sand down these outside edges. This is the stuff I'm using to do the bonding. It's a 3M DP420. It comes in black, so that'll help fill these gaps up and it won't really show. Okay, looks flush. All right, just got to get in with some Q-tips and clean up all the excess and let that dry. And I can finish up the outsides. Just got to work my way up through the grits. I'll probably end up at like 320 or so. Yeah, it's funny, I don't really mind sanding the carbon fiber. It actually sands relatively easily and quick, but the titanium, it takes forever and wears out sandpaper real fast. It's a pain in the butt, but luckily it's not taking a whole lot to get it there. Luckily it's just mostly machine marks and not like a big mismatch between the two sides. Got it pretty well dialed for not having a big step in between one side or the other. So there's that. I didn't really like the way the 400 grit was coming out, so I went back down to 220, and that's much better. It's a nice matte finish. It is missing one last thing though. That's better. This thing's turned out really well. All the layers on the carbon are showing up really nicely. Logo looks good. All the finishes are quite nice. Even got them on the inside. I'm pretty happy with this. I love how this dovetail puzzle piece looks on here. It's pretty neat. All the layers on the carbon. Looks awesome. Only one thing left to do with it. Cheers. Merry Christmas, everyone. See you on the next video.